Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for giving me your time today. Today, I'm going to be covering a subject that I'm sure is close to many people's hearts, which is the reliance on Excel spreadsheets. And this topic today is around how to hopefully help you escape that over-reliance on Excel and how we can help to unlock greater potential for your business through the use of a modern data platform. Now, this wouldn't be a data webinar if I didn't start with a few statistics. So just to give a sense of the issues that Excel poses, a 2022 survey of UK office staff actually found that from the respondents, 98% of people have seen an Excel error that's cost their employer money. From those people, 38% of their overall time is spent working with Excel spreadsheets. 18% of people that spend more than 60% of their day in Excel, which is quite a vast amount, and 37% of the people that spend more than 50% of their time have never actually had any formal Excel training. And this, I think, is where the Excel problem comes from. It's something that's readily available to us. We can make quite a lot of progress, but it does very quickly cause us some issues. So in today's session, what we're going to cover is a little bit more detail around what we consider to be Excel hell. We're then going to look at how that can transition itself as people move towards Power BI into a different type of challenge called Power BI pain. I'm then going to take you through how a data platform and a more unified approach to data management can help address these issues before looking at specifically the important role that a semantic model now plays in a modern data platform. The next thing we'll look at is how we help justify this within the business. So we're going to look at how we can help to measure the return on the investment. I will go through some real world client examples just to give you a sense of how this works in practice, before finally finishing on some top tips that I've learned over the years to help make your data project a successful one. So just quickly to introduce myself. So I'm Andy McLean. I'm the Data and Analytics Director here at Circyl. So for the last 25 years, I've worked across a number of public and private sector organizations, and the last 13 years, I've actually worked as a consultant for a number of Microsoft partners. And my role very much involves helping organizations understand the data that they have and create and implement a strategy to help get greater value from the data that they already have within their business. I started off and spent a large portion of my career designing and building data and reporting solutions. And my role now has a slightly wider focus in a more strategic sense, helping people on this digital transformation journey and understanding the digital DNA that runs through their organization. So Circyl as a business, we are the digital transformation experts, helping organizations use technology in a sensible and pragmatic way, utilizing the systems or the processes that you already have and enhancing them through Microsoft technologies. And this is based around 4 key pillars. The first one is one very close to me. So this is my team focusing on data and analytics. So whether it's integrating data from different silos, bringing that data together into a central platform, but ultimately providing information to the key people, getting the right information in front of the right people at the right time. And this is the focus of today's session. We also have a team of people that specialize on building bespoke business applications. So this is traditionally with the Dynamics platform. Most people think of Dynamics as purely a CRM, but actually it's a very highly configurable business platform that can be used for everything from a CRM, but also we've built quite a few end-to-end, almost ERP style systems for businesses to help them manage their true end-to-end process as a business that encapsulates lots of different processes without necessarily having to take the leap to a larger ERP vendor. We have a modern workplace team that helps with using the tools available to you in the Microsoft 365 stack. So whether that be SharePoint, so migrating from network drives into SharePoint, establishing intranets. But also, as I said, some of these tools that are in the Microsoft 365 stack that people don't necessarily, they already have available to them, helping to see how they can be used in day-to-day operations. We're also specialists in the low-code platform, so using the Microsoft Power Platform to build low-code apps and actually enrich processes through automation. And increasingly now looking at the world of AI, helping businesses understand how Copilot can be used and assessing and really understanding the readiness that organizations, where they are in the journey and what they need to do to start making the most of these modern applications. Where a low code approach doesn't necessarily fit the bill, also got a mobile and web application team where they can deliver modern applications, responsive web solutions. So something where maybe it's for an external audience or something more tailored. We have a team of people that can make sure that you can deliver the right experience to your customers and these external audiences on tablet devices, but also on laptops as well. So that's our 4 key pillars. And data really runs through the heart of everything that we do. So it's very much a data-centric approach. You can see a range of different technologies here on the screen, but that's our particular areas of expertise from a technical perspective. But you can see that actually it's about taking that raw data, bringing it together, helping you in terms of how you capture, integrate, analyze, and collaborate on that information, and ultimately drive greater business insight. We've delivered these projects for a range of different customers across all different sectors and organizations of different sizes. And traditionally, these kind of solutions were reserved for enterprise clients because they required quite a big budget. But now, with the adoption of cloud and the move to smaller, more iterative development projects, actually these kind of solutions and these kind of benefits can be applicable to any size of organization. It's just about tailoring that to your specific needs. And we believe that this breadth of experience across a number of different industries, even though we see common challenges, helps us in terms of bringing our experience to help you really establish what your digital DNA is. Okay, so that's just a little bit about who I am and who Circyl are, but what we're here to talk about today is about Excel Hell. So I really want to get into this quite quickly. So Excel, as I say, a tool that's been around for a long time, and the reason that this sort of manifests itself is quite common and quite understandable. So with any organization, typically there's a range of different data sources or systems in use. So here across the top of this diagram, we've got some examples, whether it's a sales system, CRM, maybe you've got a particular finance system, HR, and actually we see quite a lot of organizations running quite key business critical processes in Excel. Also, as well, there's other data sets and things that lurk about also in Excel spreadsheets. And that's completely reasonable because these solutions are best of breed and they are focused on a particular area of your business. Now, to really understand the overall performance of your business, what you typically need is bits of information from each of these different systems in the same place at the same time. So what we tend to see is teams of people or individuals building a whole raft of Excel spreadsheets on a regular basis. So whether it's that weekly report or that monthly management pack, it's often as a result of lots of effort, bringing data from lots of different sources, extracts into Excel, manipulation into a master spreadsheet, and producing some reports for a wider audience, typically multiple versions and typically emailed out to people. And the challenge here is that because different people are producing the reports, you can typically find a scenario where you've actually got different numbers in different reports. And that lack of trust in the quality or the accuracy of your information really does prevent you from becoming data driven. If you don't trust what you see in front of you, it's very difficult to start using that to make a positive change. And I'm sure we've all sat in meetings where people are arguing over who has the right number. And it just is a real blocker to becoming more data driven. And what you see is all these different people that need to use the reports, right from the exec down to individual employees and actually externally to your customers or your suppliers. They don't know what to trust either. And it just becomes a bit of a mess. So why do we get into this situation? It's completely reasonable and understandable. It happens almost in every customer that we work with. And there has to be a reason for this. So The reasons we see is that Excel is accessible to most people. It's on most people's laptops as part of 365. It's familiar. It's got an interface we're all kind of familiar with now because of how long we've used the Office suite. It's got a very sort of consistent user interface that people understand how to use it quite quickly. It's low cost. So compared to going and buying an off-the-shelf solution, if I can build something quickly in Excel, you can imagine that's quite appealing to businesses to keep their costs down. But also you can make some quite quick progress that really starts to have some value on the top end. It starts to look like you've made some real value quite quickly because people now have access to information. The consequences of that, though, is that actually you've now got this reliance on people, and it's not uncommon for us to see a number of people days per month or per week spent simply extracting the information, manipulating the data into spreadsheets just to produce those reports. And this really does range from days, weeks, and it's effectively dead time just to produce the reports, not necessarily acting on the information. You've got that reliance on people, so you have a lot of local knowledge in people's heads. So you have a big risk to the business in terms of whether people aren't available, whether they are on holiday, off sick, or whether they leave the business. That reliance on people to do the work means that as a business, you say the delays and the reliance on people can be quite a challenge. And as we said in the diagram, that data quality questions, do we actually trust the accuracy of the reports we're looking at? And will that actually affect us? In the statistics I showed at the start, Excel spreadsheets having a financial impact on employers and businesses around, that's the sort of thing that we're getting from this approach, which can be really quite damaging. So what is the cost if we just carry on as we are? And we understand that this can be quite challenging. It's very easy to stick with your day-to-day business as usual processes. One, because you haven't got time to think of a different approach. And sometimes there isn't an awareness that a different approach actually exists. So the cost of doing nothing is actually potentially lost opportunities. So late or incorrect data stops you as a business proactively staying on top of everything and effectively finding new business or keeping that level of customer service up to the standard you expect. We typically see maybe as a business grows or the requirements grow, increased costs because people have to now throw extra people to create more Excel reports. So actually the idea that this saves money because it's a low cost solution is typically counteracted by the fact that you've got a whole team of people having to do it, which is a cost just to simply keep those reports operational. There's some security risks with this as well. So how easy is it for that email just to go out with the report in there, start sending the data out? It's very difficult to apply the relevant security to an Excel spreadsheet. Yes, you can put a password on it, but effectively data leakage is a real risk with this approach. And finally, the challenge of potentially getting left behind, not just the business, so losing your competitive advantage if you've got competitors that are more proactive, but also for employees working with these out-of-date systems or approaches or having to spend your time manually creating reports all the time isn't where you want to be spending your effort and adding value to the business. So actually, the risk of getting left behind is quite high. So that's our Excel challenge. Now, in 2015, Microsoft created and launched a tool called Power BI, and Power BI was billed as the savior to all the problems. This will get you away from Excel hell. It's a fantastic tool for visualization. You can manipulate the data in a much easier fashion. You can have the data stored in a model behind the scenes, and it's a much more scalable and robust approach than just relying on spreadsheets. And while some of this is true, effectively it hasn't necessarily solved the problem. Power BI has become the answer or the output, but the same challenges can still apply. And we've seen a lot of clients come to us in terms of asking for Power BI without necessarily trying to understand what the challenges they're trying to solve, and Power BI being a facilitator of that. So what we've seen in practice is, again, same systems across the top. That doesn't change. But now people, and again, Power BI was sort of aimed at the advanced Excel user. It uses a similar language in DAX, which is similar to Excel functions. You've got a nice interface that can allow you to manipulate the data and build these repeatable processes in Power BI. And really, you can build some quite nice reports as well. So all we actually saw was same thing happen, connected directly into data sources, same human intervention or interpretation of the relevant business rules. So now, rather than a whole raft of Excel spreadsheets, we've just got a lot of Power BI workbooks that, again, are now disconnected and creates the same problem. So we've still got these users that don't know what to trust. So how do people get into Power BI Pain? How does this come about then? So Power BI has a whole range of different connectors that allow you to get into source systems. So getting access to data has actually been a lot easier than simply extracting out into Excel. The tool I talked about, the graphical interface, means that you can do some quite sophisticated manipulations on the data to turn it into the right format, and they are effectively repeatable. And from a reporting perspective, you can build some really visually appealing reports that allow you to drill down and to start to produce this journey for people that allows them to not just visually, rather than just tables of information, see something more graphically. But you can imagine to an end user that seems really beneficial compared to the Excel approach, but it doesn't necessarily support ongoing scalability. So what we then see is separate workbooks have to be maintained. So there's a lot of technical debt that builds up now. So things that might have worked in the first workbook that don't work in the second, everything has to be kept in sync. And we always know there's an opportunity that you could miss something if you were to update maybe some business logic and it didn't end up in all your reports. So you're now creating something that becomes a real amount of effort to maintain. The ability to go straight off the source system seems great, but actually, if you haven't got an efficient process in terms of the data you're pulling back, maybe you're pulling back far too much data, maybe you're trying to do too many sophisticated things on the data, that is hitting your source system directly. And we've seen examples where the source system itself starts to take a real hit, and that creates you an operational problem because now the business can't do its usual processes to actually, its day-to-day operations. And finally, the ability to push these reports out into the Power BI service or make it a web-based report that people can get access to. Yes, it's internal, but still the framework or the governance, people don't necessarily consider this. You can download Power BI Desktop, create a report quite quickly and push it out to an audience. But really, have we thought about who needs to access the data, who needs to see the report at all, and how do we manage that moving forward so we don't just get this explosion of Power BI reports? So those are two very common challenges, and it's almost the natural journey that a business will go on, starting in Excel, moving to Power BI, but limitations in both approaches if not done properly. So what I'm now going to talk about is how a centralized data platform can help you get the most from both of those tools. What we're not saying here is not to use them, but actually there's a much more efficient and best practice way to get the most value from both Excel and Power BI. So what we're not saying is remove these sources. These systems are in place doing I'm sure, a fantastic job within the business. As I said, specialist systems that perform a certain task. And we're not saying to rip any of those out or start again. We leave those systems where they are. What we are saying, though, is rather than extract data from each of the systems manually each time and have different people doing it, we want to establish a centralized data platform. And there's a couple of logos here. The one on the left is the Azure platform, Microsoft's Azure platform. The one on the right is Microsoft's newest platform, which you may have heard of, which is Fabric. Now, the two are relatively interchangeable. They're based on the same principles. One is much more mature in the Azure platform. Fabric is emerging, and it's becoming Microsoft's direction of travel. In our experience, it's still in its infancy, good for very niche use cases, but it will become the platform of choice. The two approaches in terms of how you build solutions on these platforms, which I'll go into shortly, are fairly consistent. So if you do choose to go with the current Azure platform, there's a migration path that means you can move to Fabric when it becomes the right time for you. And that will differ for each business. So what we do is we now take that manual extraction process and we automatically extract the data. And the key thing here is moving data away from the source system itself. So that performance issue I talked about, data is just taken quickly away from the source system so you don't impact its performance. It's done automatically, which means you don't have a reliance on people. And at that point, you can apply your business logic once and consistently, which means that all reports will be working from one single version of the truth. At that point, you can build Power BI reports on top of the platform. So Power BI, again, is a fantastic tool for data visualization and exploration. And because we're going from one version of the data, we then get consistency. However you slice and dice the information, you know you're going to look at the same numbers. And that builds confidence around the business that whichever report you're looking at, you're all working from that same single version. So as our users build the reports, you build that confidence. And now, because the data is timely and accurate, you've got the right information in front of the right people at the right time, and you can move to becoming a much more data-driven organization. So I've used the centralized data platform there as a bit of a one thing. So I'm going to delve into that now in a bit more technical detail. So more than ever, we can connect into more sources than we've ever been able to before. So rather than just the Excel spreadsheet or the database that's on a server somewhere, we can now pull data from more sources than ever before. So we can still pull data from the on-premises database. Most cloud platforms will have an API. We can do more real-time integration, get data coming in even more frequently. It may be that you've got information in emails, and actually, there might still be data that lives in Excel. This isn't about completely removing the use of Excel within the business. Sometimes there's a data set that doesn't naturally live in any of these systems that still plays a really important part in how you want to report. Now, when we build the central platform, the first thing we want to do is extract data into a single format. And this is really key because each of these different sources across the top, whether it's structured data, unstructured, even the difference between a database and an API, the data structures will be different. And what we want to do is load the data automatically and immediately combine all these different data types into one single format ready for analytics. And that's what we can do here in our data lake. The other benefit of the data lake is that whilst the source system or data source that you're loading from will typically only present to you the latest version. So if I use an example of an order that's going through processes, different stages of an order, the source system typically will only tell you the current status of that order. Whereas we want to understand from an analytical perspective, how long it spent at each stage, what stage was it at this time last week, last month. And if you report directly from the source system, it won't tell you that. So Data Lake gives us the ability to do something called time travel, where we can do more point in time reporting. And this really is where we understand the true picture of what's gone on in whichever area we're choosing to analyze at that time. After that, we then build either a data warehouse or more commonly, you're seeing it referred to as a data lakehouse. And what we're saying here is we need to build one data model that represents your business. So whereas the source systems will have a certain structure and the way they refer to things is how that system works, even if it has been configured slightly to suit your particular needs. What we want to do is create one version of the data that actually allows you to cross-analyze. So whether it's data coming from your sales system, your CRM, your finance system, if you want to analyze all of that data by one view of a customer, you need to have one representation of a customer and all of the transactions from the separate systems linked to that customer so that you can do that cross-analysis. And this is where people fall down when they purely come from Power BI backwards. They haven't got that data structure that allows this quick and easy cross-analysis. And this is why the data platform is really important. This approach also allows you to integrate data and systems as you move forward, but also to retire legacy systems. So we typically see examples where people have moved to a new system, but they've had to keep the old system switched on because it's got data that they still might need at some point in the future. Now, the challenge is that you're probably paying licensing fees and storage costs to keep that system running when actually it probably won't be used that frequently. What we can do here in this approach is bring the data historically into the data platform and then also bring data from the new system, the new data into the model as well. Have that together in one single data model, which then means that when you're doing your reporting, you don't need to know which system it came from. You've just got a full history of all the data over time, and you can retire the legacy system and actually, in most cases, reduce some costs straight away just by not keeping systems you're not using operational. The final piece of the jigsaw is the semantic model. Now, this is the business-friendly representation of your data. So whilst the data warehouse is still reasonably technical in terms of how data is stored or how things are named, the semantic model is what brings it to life. This is where all the different areas are joined together already. It uses business-friendly terminology based on your business. And it's the one point of access that most people will interact with the data however they wish to do so. And because of that, there's actually more tools than ever before in terms of how you can interact with that. And it will all depend on what particular reason or how you wish to use the data. So whether it's building dashboards in Power BI, maybe you still want to do ad hoc analysis or do some pivot tables in Excel. Again, we're not saying Excel shouldn't be used. It just needs to be used in the right way. You might want to produce a regular PowerPoint presentation, whether it's internal or whether it's to customers. You can set that up once and refresh it on a regular basis rather than having to repeat the same exercise all the time. And then I'm sure people are increasingly aware now of the more modern approach to analytics and the advantages that a more proactive approach can give you. So you're setting yourself up here to start using predictive analytics, machine learning, and also you're on the path then to using AI and Copilot. So in time, we fully expect this interrogation and use of data within any business to be conducted in natural language, similar to how you're seeing, ChatGPT used at the moment. But all of these things are only possible once you get this trusted, consolidated version of your data in one place with a platform like this. So just to quickly just get into the semantic model in a little bit more detail, it does provide you that single point of access with security in place as well, which is really key. The single point of access means that it will, when you log into or when you connect to that model, it will identify who you are, and you can apply a security model that will either trim the data to just the records I'm allowed to see, or maybe whole areas of data that I'm allowed to see. And that will traverse across the different tools as well. So if I use Excel, the same permissions apply because they've been applied once in a single place. The semantic model aggregates data as well as providing a transactional view. So it's built on the transactions, but aggregates up. So if you want to produce a dashboard for maybe the exec or a rolled up level for managers, that same model is being used to produce a more granular version for teams. And the ability to go from that high level number down into the transaction detail is what the semantic model brings to the solution. It supports self-service. So again, not having to rely on IT teams and the burden you put on IT teams to build reports. Non-technical users can use this model because it is business friendly. And it means that if you've just got a quick question to answer, you can connect into the model without having to build a more formal and structured report. And as I said, it's this enabler of AI and predictive analytics. So you're setting yourself up now for a much more positive and more in line with the way that things are going in terms of using the latest technologies to give you that competitive advantage moving forward. So business benefits of putting a platform in like this: data diversity. So we're aware of diversity in all aspects of our life and the benefits that brings, rather than reporting simply on one particular source of data, bringing them together and having different aspects, which I'll explain a bit more shortly, gives you that true picture. It really does give you greater context and insight. You now have access to timely and accurate information you can trust. You've got a single version of the truth that everybody can work from, so you're all working off the same picture. And actually, the cloud-based approach is secure and scalable. So you can start really small, pick that high-profile business case, and increase the number of sources or reports that come from the platform over time at your pace, rather than having to build the whole solution in one go and becoming this much bigger investment and a much more comprehensive solution for people to start using and adopting. The best approach is to be a bit more iterative and actually start small and build up. One of the important things we get asked is, what will this give us back? How do we measure the return on this investment? And that is the real key. it is an investment, simply rather than a cost. There's a lot of hidden costs with the Excel-based approach that's happening at the moment. This is an investment to not just reutilize that time and cost that you're using with the Excel approach, but actually start setting yourself up for a much better future with data at the heart of that. So in terms of return on investment, really being more proactive on top of your day-to-day operations helps to identify opportunities for increased revenue and growth, and that should be a big driver for this. You will understand your business better and be able to stay on top of it and start to drive out greater opportunity. The simple thing is just the efficiency savings, both in time and cost, from not having manual processes, reallocating people to more productive tasks and actually more interesting tasks than just creating Excel spreadsheets, and having people who understand your data and your business, using it to start acting on what the information is telling you, and also driving out greater engagement, both for your clients and your employees, having modern tools that people come into work every day and know that they're doing something that adds value to a business, but also a much more tailored experience for your clients. So not just a general approach, but a data-driven approach based on what you've actually done or what you're planning to do with that particular client. This is just one example of a real world example. This was a sales-led organization that wanted to analyze sales performance against target. Really common requirement. You can imagine each salesperson, how are they doing against their target? When that rolls up into a team, what does the team perform against target, and how are we performing as an overall business? So this was being done by quite senior members of the business, using Excel spreadsheets, taking 4 to 5 days every month just to produce the reports before anything happens. And we work with this client to establish the same approach, the same data platform that I've gone through so far. So that looked like the integration and creation of a central platform, an initial Power BI set of reports that analyzed the performance of each salesperson and provided that journey of team level performance and overall business performance, and produced that report to different audiences. And that was really well received and saved a lot of time. So those ROI points I talked about, the efficiency saving, etc., and the cost savings, because again, it was being created by quite a senior member of the business. But that's only really one part of it. To compare a salesperson against their target is quite a binary thing. So what we did then was look at what other sources were available to us within the business, what other systems did the sales team use, and at that point we integrated their CRM system, and this gave us their opportunities, the customers they're working with, the activities they're doing. So by bringing that data in, combining it, by linking it to the same people, the same team structure, the same calendar to look at different time periods, we then were able to add additional reports into the reporting pack that understood their sales activities. The final piece of the jigsaw was, okay, these are the kind of activities that the salespeople are undertaking. We can share best practice. How profitable is a customer from how much time we have to spend working with them before we get a sale. But the final bit was, is it okay to simply judge people on their activities and their performance against target? How do we understand who was available? What were their working patterns? At that point, we brought the HR system in. That gave us their sickness. It gave us their leave. It also gave them their working patterns, so who's an FTE. But it was at this point then that we understood the final piece of the jigsaw, which was how available is each salesperson and what part does that play in their overall performance. And it was only when we had these three systems and pieces of context together that we got a true picture and how to actually measure the sales team effectively. So just finally now to finish on some top tips from the projects that we've delivered and just things that we see working with different customers to hopefully pass this on to take forward in your own projects. One of the big things that's probably changed in the last 10 years is starting small. So rather than a big multi-month project to deliver everything in one go, really we can start a lot smaller now, and that would certainly be a top tip, is to start small, pick a business case, and that's really important. Don't just put a solution in for the sake of it. Find out what your pain points are. What business challenge would you like greater insight into, and make sure it ties back to something. Start small, build the bits of the solution that you need, because you can quickly add extra bits of data in or more reports once you understand the effectiveness of that first piece that you've delivered, and take the things that you learn and iterate moving forward. The business case is really important, making sure that this actually solves a business problem. You want to avoid people looking at all the hard work and sort of going, so what? Or the perception that that is already available in an Excel spreadsheet. It has to be aligned to telling you something you didn't know, or doing something much more effectively, so that you can really make sure it solves a business problem. As I said, in the diagram I showed, the central platform, getting the data model right is the key to the success of these projects. If you get the data right and you get the right model for the kind of analytics you're doing, this is where you can then connect to it, all those different tools I talked about, and make data a really key part of your overall operations. Where we've probably seen the biggest challenges is where people have started with the reports, not got the right data model or data structure behind the scenes, and that will quickly unravel and cause you a lot of rework and actually a lot of lost time and effort. When getting the model right from the first time that you start to work with this, getting that right in the first instance will set you up then to really rapidly add more value to people as you move through. And finally, what we shouldn't underestimate is bringing people on the journey with you. So, there's a big culture part to implementing data and reporting solutions and being more data driven. People are in Excel because they're familiar with it. There's a comfort to Excel, but make your business users part of the journey. These used to be IT projects where the IT department would build a solution like this and the business would start to use it, but there was always a feeling that maybe it had been imposed on the users. This is now a business solution. We're working typically with finance directors or business representatives, because that's what this solution has to do. And IT are a big part of helping us to facilitate that, but it has to be business led and facilitated by IT. So bringing people on the journey, making them part of this solution, will just help adoption, make people feel like they are contributing to this, because ultimately it has to deliver for people all around the business. On the basis of how to start small, we actually operate in lots of different ways. So whether it's from supporting something maybe you've already got in place through a Circyl Care contract, delivering an initial proof of concept, maybe a minimum viable product where we're going to build a production grade solution, but for a subset of your information for a first priority business case. Maybe you want to do something more agile by buying some time box time from us. We've also got some quick start solutions to help you get up and running with something more out of the box, more of a product-based solution. And we also deliver strategic engagements as well. So we're not expecting everybody to understand where to start or what the best solution would be. We're more than happy to come and work with you as a strategic partner to help you find the best business case and help you implement that, sometimes utilizing your own internal resources as well as part of our overall project team. So just to summarize then, and discuss about how you could possibly move forward on your own data and digital transformation journey. Next steps would be happy to have an initial intro call to understand your specific requirements, because these solutions are tailored specifically to you. These aren't off-the-shelf offerings. They are about using the technology to your particular needs. We also do discovery days where we're happy to come on site to your place of work with you to understand your current approach, current processes, and recommend our best practice way forward. And in some cases, people have an initial project they understand already, and they're just looking for that partner they can trust to deliver. In that case, we're also very happy to get involved in your existing project and start to help out, see how we can add value to move you along on that journey. So that's it from me. That's everything in terms of my content for today. These are obviously different ways that you can get in touch with us. So we have the Circyl website, emails to inquiries at circyl.co.uk, and you can also catch a lot of our content on LinkedIn.